and the judges can introduce themselves.
Hi, good afternoon, Washington, and congratulations on making it to the national finals. That's a great accomplishment. My name is Ben Glickman. I work for the California Attorney General's office. I'm also an alumnus of this program. I participated in the national finals way back in 1995 on behalf of California. And we're gonna have fun this afternoon. If you get stumped, just hold really still and we'll think your Zoom froze.
My name is Ali Khan. I am an attorney in Chicago, and like Ben, an alum of the program, representing Illinois at the national competition back in 1998. I'm excited to be talking to you today, and congratulations again for being here.
Good afternoon. I'm Dan Taubman. I'm a senior judge on the Colorado Court of Appeals in Denver, Colorado. I'm not an alumnus of the program, but I've worked with We the People for a long time, and I look forward to hearing your presentation.
If you could go ahead and introduce yourselves and your teacher.
Good afternoon. My name is Rachel Simmons, and the woman who is most inspirational to me is Jeanette Rankin for defying gender norms and becoming the first woman ever elected to the U.S. House of Representatives.
Hello, my name is Nick Mazziotti, and the woman who's most inspirational to me is Katherine Johnson for her contributions to the space race despite being a Black woman at NASA.
Hello, my name is Sam Bailey, and the woman who's most inspirational to me is Greta Thunberg for using her young voice to advocate for climate change.
Hello, my name is Amelia Blakely, and the woman who is most inspirational to me is Susan B. Anthony for her unyielding dedication to expanding the right to vote. And on behalf of Unit 3, our advisor, Gretchen Wolfing, Tahoma High School, and the state of Washington, I thank you for judging us today.
Our pleasure. So we'll go ahead and ask the question. It should be no surprise. It's number 2. There is nothing I dread so much as a division of the Republic into 2 great parties, each arranged under its leader and in opposition to each other. What issues led to the formation of the original political parties? To what extent have those issues persisted in American political parties? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of a unified or divided government? Whenever you're ready.
Divided we stand, united we fall. Thomas Jefferson.
In the early American Republic, growing disputes regarding the economy, federal power, and foreign policy gave rise to the first political parties, fueled by disagreements between the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists.
Controversy occurred when Congress used the necessary and proper clause of Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18 to establish the first national bank. Federalists like Hamilton supported this system of a stronger federal government. As denoted in Federalist 51, you must enable the government to control the governed.
Conversely, Anti-Federalists led by Jefferson believed that when government fears the people, there is liberty. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny.
The notion of American political parties was solidified after George Washington declared American neutrality in the Napoleonic Wars, causing debates surrounding how America should be involved in foreign affairs.
Anti-Federalists supported a French alliance and subsequently formed the Democratic Republican Party, while those in favor of a British alliance rallied under the Federalist Party, thus becoming the nation's first 2 political parties.
Since then, political parties have dominated nearly all aspects of American government, which has greatly contributed to decreased cooperation and bipartisanship throughout history.
The 2-party system has dramatically evolved over time, but the issues of the economy, federal power, and foreign policy, which led to the first political parties, continue to polarize our government.
Since the 1850s, American politics have been divided between the Democrat and Republican parties. The consequences of political polarization were witnessed firsthand during the Civil War, namely because of evolving stances on slavery and states' rights, which were exemplified by the Dred Scott v. Sanford decision.
Both parties became riddled with political corruption during the 19th century, with politicians being more concerned with lucrative industry and business than the working class. Many of Republican President Theodore Roosevelt's policies were directed at fixing the economy, as seen in Northern Securities Company v. United States, where the Supreme Court prevented a railroad monopoly with one of the president's reforms.
Although the economy and federal power remain prevalent issues in the 21st century, foreign policy has become more polarizing due to America's increased global presence.
While Republicans tend to prefer stricter immigration policies, as seen with President Trump's travel ban under Executive Order 13769, Democrats favor more open borders, as shown by President Joe Biden's first day in office, where he rescinded his predecessor's travel ban.
Disagreements like this are no different from the disputes between the original Federalists and Democratic Republicans, illustrating how much these issues have persisted in American politics.
Although a unified government can be more efficient with one party controlling both the legislative and executive branches, a divided government shares its power between two parties, promoting bipartisan legislation.
For example, with a Democratic supermajority in the 111th Congress, President Obama's commitment to healthcare became law under the Affordable Care Act.
Despite legislative productivity, problems can arise in a unified government when steamrolled legislation is not bipartisan. Since its ratification, 28 states have filed lawsuits against the ACA.
On the contrary, history reveals that a divided government has led to more bipartisan success and longer-lasting legislation. In particular, the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 still protects individuals today and was passed almost unanimously in a Democratic Congress, then signed into law by Republican President George H.W. Bush.
However, extreme party loyalty can increase the potential for gridlock and government shutdowns, which can have devastating impacts on the American people. This was seen when 7 of the 8 shutdowns during Ronald Reagan's presidency occurred due to partisan disagreements over spending cuts, abortion, and civil rights.
Not only were thousands of workers furloughed, but the House Post Office and Civil Service Committee estimated that the one-day shutdowns cost taxpayers approximately $90 million in back pay and related expenses.
Regardless of the advantages under a unified or divided government, today's divisive political climate confirms John Adams' assertion that the two-party system has the potential to be the greatest political evil under our Constitution.
Great, thank you. So, I mean, one obvious outcome of the two-party system is that third parties traditionally have not been able to get much leverage or haven't had much traction in America. Is that a problem? And if it is, are there solutions you would propose that might make it easier for third parties?
I would say yes, this is an issue. It's been so solidified in our current government that we have a Democratic and Republican parties, and third parties have so little footing in that system. And I would argue that part of the problem would be the Electoral College. You could see this with Ross Perot's attempted run. And since he captured 19% of the popular vote, but if he were to get more, it actually might end up being no one winning. If he were to win some states, it would actually could result in no one having a clear defining win of that presidency.
I also believe that this is a major issue as it is giving certain minority parties, they're not having a say in any of the government and they don't feel represented. In order to combat this issue, I would propose a system similar to that of Finland, which is a percent representative democracy, which means that if a political party or a person receives 5% of the votes of the country, then that political party will receive 5% representation in government. And this would ensure that even the smallest portions of the government and the country are represented.
Another reason why it has been so difficult for third parties to gain traction in the US is because the dominant parties, the Democrat and Republican parties, they tend to incorporate the views of third parties into their platforms, which is definitely a problem because it makes elections very complicated for voters because they don't necessarily understand what they're voting for when they vote for these platforms. So by allowing third parties to be on their own rather than incorporating them into the dominant parties, we can even increase voter turnout among those who feel confused by the way these parties are currently arranged.
Adding on to that, we can see this with the two independents in Congress that have constantly aligned themselves with the Democratic Party because they don't have enough voice to stick out on their own. And I would propose to abolishing the winner-take-all system in the Electoral College, which was considered constitutional in multiple court cases and is still upheld to this day.
Great. You touched upon, or you mentioned the Electoral College briefly. Would you support abolishing the Electoral College? Why or why not?
I would support that. I would actually look to Washington's use of the top two primary, which allows individuals to vote for a candidate no matter what their party affiliation is. And it allows individuals to feel like they can vote for a person and not a party. And I think that that would really help in calming the different, in calming that two-party rigidity.
I would like to agree with my colleague, and in abolishing the Electoral College, I would advocate for a runoff voting system like we saw in the Georgia Senate runoffs. And this system is superior because it requires candidates to be popular enough to win the first round and then even more popular enough to win the second round.
I would advocate for a ranked choice voting system. This would help people become more involved by ranking their candidates based on choice, and then it goes through several rounds. This would also help with party polarization within politics.
Excuse me. So in your opening statement, you mentioned the Dred Scott decision. Could you elaborate or expand on that and tell us what the alignment of the political parties was leading up to the Civil War?
Yes, so the Dred Scott v. Sanford decision it's been looked at for the past 100 years as possibly one of the worst decisions that the Supreme Court has made. And so it looked at actually ruling that the Missouri Compromise was not actually constitutional. And so Dred Scott was not allowed to be a free man, despite the fact that he had followed his owner into a free state.
Those who supported Dred Scott were a part of the Radical Republicans, which were a faction of the Republican Party. And this was the group of people who strongly opposed slavery and fought for abolition and equality until the end of the Reconstruction era.
And party divisions formed on the topic of slavery because there was an argument as to whether or not the Constitution was a pro-slavery document, as there are provisions in the Constitution such as the Fugitive Slave Clause of Article 4, Section 2, Clause 3, which would lead people to the impression that the Constitution protects the institution of slavery.
We can see this party division in the election of 1860 before the Civil War for Abraham Lincoln, but through the Democratic Party, they were so divisive on the issue of slavery that they split into two and appointed two different candidates.
Thank you. So I want to turn back. You mentioned ranked choice voting as a possible option for reducing some of the polarization. What do you think the pros and cons are of a ranked choice voting system?
I would argue that some of the pros of this system would be to allow individuals to really get to know a candidate, it's themselves and not necessarily the party that they represent. So Maine has been working towards incorporating ranked choice voting beginning in 2011, and they should be finished incorporating it at all levels in 2022. And I think that that allows individuals to really understand all of the policies of their candidates, and by ranking them allows them to kind of weigh the pros and cons of each person.
A disadvantage at the federal level, incorporating it at a federal level, would be that you would have to change the Constitution if we were changing the Electoral College. However, at a state level, there have been many states that have started implementing this in their local and state elections, as well as Maine, also Alaska.
Another pro, it would give independents who don't necessarily align with one political party more say if they don't truly believe that one candidate fully represents them. They could rank their candidates. In a 2016 survey of the independents of the voters in Iowa, 36% of them were independents, and they felt that neither candidate who was running for office fully represented them.
But isn't it anti-democratic? I mean, you could have a candidate in the first round get 49% of the vote, but ultimately lose the election, even though he or she was the first choice of more people. Isn't that anti-democratic?
I would argue that no, it's not anti-democratic, because by allowing individuals to rank them again afterwards and continually rank them if need be, it allows for those candidates to be more expressive on their issues when speaking to the public or when making it clear why they should be elected. Because a lot of times individuals will narrow their scope down to just a few issues in order to get those single issue voters. But I would argue that no, it's not anti-democratic, because it allows them to kind of widen their scope of their views and let the individuals voting for them really get to know them.
I would like to agree with my colleague. It's not anti-democratic because the people are voting on who they want to represent them. And although there are multiple rounds in this voting process, that doesn't mean that that person represents them any less.
I think we've hit that time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And let's give a round of applause for the students for all their hard work. Thank you. And now the judges have some feedback for you.
Yeah, so first one of the day, right? Breathe. That's good. Congratulations. So I thought you guys did a very nice job. I thought the prepared remarks were really well done. In particular, I thought your discussion of the first sub question about how these issues have persisted, I thought you just did a really nice job of walking us through, slavery in the 19th century right up until, the travel ban. I just thought that was a really well done and informative discussion. On our questions, I thought you guys had good support for your opinions and were very responsive to our questions. There are other things you might have said as far as how you might help the third parties out, but I thought the ones you did say made sense and addressed that question. I'm just looking at my notes here, sorry. And what I appreciated is that you had a little bit of evidence to support ranked choice voting, right? That Maine has been using it. I might have liked to hear a little bit more about how it's actually worked there. Do people like it? Has it increased, decreased turnout? Like how has it actually functioned? But that's a nitpick. It was clear that you had done the research and knew the material. I don't really have anything else to add. I thought you guys did a very nice job.
Yes, first of all, congratulations again for being here. I know it takes a lot of work and effort. Really enjoyed listening to you all. I want to echo a lot of what Ben said. I really liked the kind of the through line from like the late 1790s and early 1800s to kind of modern day. It was easy to follow, and I enjoyed your examples. With regard to the Electoral College question, I perhaps had wished maybe you'd mention how Nebraska apportions Electoral College votes, as well as maybe talk about, how, preserving the Electoral College is a big deal for small states, kind of, touched upon that. But that's a very minor thing. I mean, you guys clearly know a lot of these issues. So, overall, really, really nice job.
I agree with my colleagues. I thought you did a very nice job. I liked your, your introductory explanation of the issues that created the original parties, the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans, and you were thorough in giving us those explanations. I also liked your examples of the advantages and disadvantages of divided government. On the one hand, the ADA being passed as bipartisan legislation. On the other hand, government shutdowns under President Reagan. And I liked your thorough explanation about the differences of the political parties leading up to the Civil War. That was good. And I appreciated the poll that you cited of Iowa voters and that showed that 36% of them were independent. And I would have, if we had had more time, I would have liked to have asked you if you think that political parties will become less important over time as more and more people become independent and fewer people are registered to one party or another. But overall, I think you did a very good job, and you should be pleased with your presentation this afternoon.
All right, congratulations and good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.